This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with Andrew Coors of Steelhead Composites. Andrew, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you. And thank you for letting me be part of the 10 network.
Great. So what was your background before joining Steelhead Composites? What did you do before this?
I've had a meandering and non-linear journey that ended me here at Steelhead Composites, including managing a $25 billion investment fund, an executive role at a Fortune 500 company, overseeing global operations for a manufacturing company. And recently, 100% of my time and a lot of my money has gone into Steelhead Composites.
Well, great. So what led you to start work in the composite space? Why did you choose this area?
I could have never imagined in either school or in my career that I would end up in the composite space and selling products to some of the coolest customers imaginable that really are changing the world. And ending up here was mainly just luck, being at the right place at the right time. So I had a partner who was manufacturing a automotive system, and they were really struggling to find a critical component. And because of the lack of this critical component, they couldn't sell their device to the market. And we had this idea of, why don't we start a company that manufactures the component for their system? The component was a lightweight hydraulic component. And we did that about 7 years ago, where we had that conversation about 7 years ago. And it was naive because hydraulics were really demanding first step for taking composites, which are generally lightweight. Think of composites as carbon fiber, kayak paddles, and bike frames. Don't really think of them as hydraulic components, which you think of as mobile machinery and dirty and heavy. But we took on the challenge, and we were quite successful in manufacturing these hydraulic components. The interesting thing about that is, by solving the issues of lightweight hydraulics, high cycles, abusive environments, high wear and tear, very conservative buyer base, and slow buying cycles, we had done the hardest market probably possible for testing our ability to make composite pressure vessels. And that has allowed us to pivot into two of the most exciting markets that we see happening right now. One is in aerospace, with our products, our propulsion for satellites and rockets that are enabling next generation of space travel, as well as hydrogen tanks, which are critical for decarbonizing the Earth. We would have never gotten here if we hadn't tripped over the hydraulics market to end up where we are today.
So what's your advice for people investing in the composite space? What do you tell them to do before they write that first check?
Composite space is just a material, and I'd say the main thing for investors is to relook at how we as investors view manufacturing. For years, I've got a friend who calls manufacturing the triple Ds: dirty, dangerous, and disappearing. But that's changing, and I think it's really important for investors to not be so wary about companies that actually make something. So here's our little company. We export our products to 26 different countries. We earn a good margin, and we're growing. Because we make something, we can't scale as quickly as a software company, for instance, but once we're designed in, we're not at risk of imploding either. So my main, advice for someone that's looking at composites is, don't be scared of people that actually make something.
Absolutely. A lot of people like recurring revenue software, but if you have a hardware designed in, that could be much harder to replace than just a piece of software. So Apple, for example, they primarily sell hardware products like phones and so forth. That's quite a great piece of hardware to replace for sure. So let's talk about the state of investing in the composite industry. How is that evolving, and what kind of growth rates are you seeing in it? It seems like there's many applications that it can go in.
Our products, we have products that are everywhere from space to the bottom of the ocean. And it's evolving very quickly. One of the mega trends that we're seeing is lightweighting of everything. And composites has already become dominant in sporting goods, and we're seeing composites becoming more dominant as well in industrial applications. But there's two areas that we had no idea would be where they are 10 years ago. And one really is the private space, which 10 years ago, I think there was some activity, but there was no real understanding of how large the market could be and how quickly it could grow. Goldman Sachs estimates that by 2040, private space will be $1 trillion industry, which is just phenomenal when you think about the growth rates that's required to take something that historically has been dominated by NASA and a few of the large prime companies, and now has been spread to probably hundreds of different companies that are making novel satellites and novel rockets. And it's really cool to be in an industry that's growing that quickly and have a component that enables these companies to have their satellites be moved or their rockets to be launched. Likewise for hydrogen, where people have been talking about hydrogen for 30 years. But about 18 months ago, we went from getting maybe one inquiry for hydrogen a month to having inquiries almost every day for hydrogen. And the International Energy Agency says that by 2050, the hydrogen economy will be a $2.5 trillion industry. And we're a small portion of that, but storage will be critical, as hydrogen is the smallest thing in the universe. And we make a product that can store it at high pressure and safely allow hydrogen to grow as quickly as the market wants it to.
So what's driving that demand for hydrogen? Of course, you mentioned the space industry, but what else is driving that number?
So there's been ever since Dieselgate and the Volkswagen issues with diesel, we've seen particularly the automotive companies as well as the regulators really pushing the idea, the concept and investment into zero emission technologies. Of course, the number one we think about is electric vehicles. But if you have a larger vehicle or you need long-term storage, batteries aren't always the most efficient way to do that, but hydrogen really is. And we see applications for hydrogen in aerospace and marine and submarine, in stationary storage, grid stabilization, data center backup, trains, trucks, and buses are all projects that we're involved in. I've got a statistic that for Hyundai in South Korea, they made 1,000 fuel cell vehicles in 2018. In 2020, they say they're going to make 10,000 fuel cell vehicles. By 2040, the Korean government's target is 6.2 million fuel cell vehicles. And there just aren't many markets that have growth like that.
So I'm a big believer that I think climate change is really going to drive a lot of the technologies in the next 10 years. And it seems like this is one of them where it really comes in and abates the greenhouse gases we're putting up. And as we see Venice go underwater and we see Australia turn on fire, it starts to become real that climate change is driving a lot of what we're going to be doing. And it's now here upon us. It's not some future thing. And so money's going to start to appear to solve these problems. And it sounds like this is going to be a key element in it.
It sure feels like it. Yeah, we've been talking to so many companies that have just started recently, new companies that have new ways of addressing climate change and addressing decarbonization, and are avid believers that hydrogen is it's not the panacea, but it does have a important component in mobility and stationary storage.
Well, that's great. And so it's also a clean tech technology as well. Seems like it goes into a number of things that are going to improve the process that we have here as well. So aside from space and clean tech, where else do you see it being used?
As we are just a component manufacturer, anywhere you need to have a lightweight structure that holds extreme pressure and is safe and robust. We have a product that can often work in that. We have some of our customers we've got suspension system for Formula One race teams, and we've got high performance automotive and some just really interesting, novel companies that need lightweight components like we have. But we really see hydrogen and space to be the areas that will or could turn us into a really large company.
Well, great. So what are the challenges in working in the composite space? What do you see as the main issues to deal with?
There are a lot of issues that we've learned, and we've learned them the hard way. And I think that the number one is that manufacturing is hard. And starting a new manufacturing company it's not trivial. It takes equipment, it takes the right people, it takes patience, and there's a lot of it that's trial and error. And in the composite space, a lot of the materials have been seen kind of as a black art. And we took it upon ourselves to take that black art and turn it into a highly repeatable, engineered science. And that's just taken a lot of time and a lot of hard work. The other thing is our products are often in applications where it's really important that they're safe. Again, we make composite pressure vessels. These vessels sometimes hold 10,000 psi of internal pressure. And because of that, regulators and governments are concerned about their safety. So there's rigorous certification processes and certification bodies that we need to work with. And those certifications cost a lot of money and they take a lot of time. But they're really critical. But it's a challenge to grow a company when you have to certify a product, and that can take 18 months or 2 years, but you have customers that demand it today. So that's what we talk about on a daily basis is what certifications do we need to get next to address customer needs 2 years from now.
Well, it sounds like there's heavy regulation around this space, and with hydrogen compressed at such a rate, of course, it needs to be there, of course, but then that's also quite a competitive advantage too. If you have the certifications and know how to get them, it's not something that anybody can do. So it sounds quite interesting. Can you describe just in more detail exactly what you guys make and what does that look like?
That's a great observation on the certifications. Yeah, they're a pain up front, but they become a nice barrier to entry once we have them. Our product, we take a plastic or a metal tube and we form it or billet and we form it into what we call a liner, or a bottle. And then we reinforce that with carbon fiber so that we end up having a combination of very lightweight, but also having lots of strength. And then on the ends, we're called Steelhead Composites because we could have a steel fitting on the end of all of our tanks that allow us to have the strength of steel at the fittings where it connects to valves or regulators, but the lightweight of the structure by taking advantage of the properties of carbon fiber. It's really strong and really lightweight.
Well, great. So it sounds like you have quite a nice product there for a very fast-growing industry. Looking forward to seeing where it goes with it. Have you ever done any impact metrics on it as far as how much carbon it pulls out of the air and how much it mitigates climate change? Are there any numbers in that direction?
We have some numbers of how much CO2 can be saved if someone were to switch from a diesel generator to a fuel cell generator. And the numbers are quite nice. And the main thing about having fuel cells and hydrogen is that your only emission is water. And as long as that hydrogen is produced through electrolyzing water using electricity from solar or wind, you really have a green product that can drastically impact the amount of CO2 that's being emitted. And that's the same for putting a fuel cell bus where you're removing a diesel engine or earth moving equipment, which we've had some conversations on, where you're able to take out an internal combustion engine and replace it with a electric that is also powered by a fuel cell. It's really exciting opportunities for having quiet and clean mobility solutions and even large scale systems using fuel cells and hydrogen.
Well, very good. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here today, what else should we cover that we haven't?
Nothing, just it's a really fun company. We do all the design, the engineering, the manufacturing, and the testing. We do it all in-house. We've got a little facility here in Colorado, and we're having a lot of fun doing it, and would love to show people around if they're ever in the Colorado area.
Great. Well, appreciate to have you on the show today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for the basis of investment decisions.